down the runway thinking it was clear to take off, or did it think that it was holding short of the runway and therefore at 90 degrees to it?
Really shocking footage, and firefighters will be continuing to try to put out this fire as soon as possible, really.
We do just have, Amelia, thank you for that, come to you again, because we've had quite a lot of new pictures to us over the last 15 minutes, and if it brought you any further...
There's lessons to be learned. Really, learning lessons from this kind of thing is not the best way to improve statistical safety. Aviation is a statistical safety.
Air traffic investigator, just want to bring you back in on that point. I mean, is it a surprise to you, an aircraft that's presumably fairly full of fuel? Maybe there was luck that it was at the end of its flight and there was...
Nose of the A350 and maybe burning wreckage is carried under the nose of the A350 or something along those lines has gone on. The A350...
European flight, but for British viewers' context, this sort of size plane is usually used for what? A transatlantic flight or something of that length? And Tim Atkinson, air traffic investigator, is still with us. I mean, do you agree with that? Is this, as you look at things, perhaps not a case of needing...
We'll need to gather any imagery that was taken in the cabin. I would expect these days there will be people who've got their phones out and a video...
The whole cabin, but that is what they do, and then they are the very last ones to leave the aircraft. But the evacuation is carried out by the cabin crew. And as we've heard...
One engine on the A350 and see whether that corresponds with the height of the wing on the Dash 8. It wouldn't be at all a surprise if it does. That would start...
Through that moment and your experience, Roger, of having to give that instruction, was there panic in the aircraft? Are you surprised from that video clip that we saw? I guess we were talking with Tim Atkinson, a peer of yours, and one of the key points has been that perhaps the fire on the plane itself.
Orange, there we go, seeing orange out of that left-hand window, under the side of the plane there. And further footage we also have is showing smoke.
That we're witnessing there amongst the passengers, despite seeing flames out of the left of the window. I mean, what is your take on how calm they were during... was landing, flames quite visible there outside the left-hand window. Smoke inside the cabin also visible there.
But their condition is unknown. The captain of the Coast Guard plane did manage to escape. And this plane was on its way to Niigata Airport to deliver...
collision investigation, whether on the road or you know, in the aviation context, collisions are or aren't survivable for very... And into that, inject this idealised system that we have of navigation lights and anti-collision beacons, which has its history, you know.
And, you know, there are training and specific ways in which passengers are evacuated from an aircraft. The fact that they got...
The UK airports all work very hard to ensure that this sort of event doesn't happen. But, you know, you can never say never. Around Christmas, when there was a suspected drone incursion, you get massive disruption to the system. So, yes.
We know at this point, Amelia, that's unfolded over the last couple of hours.
Well, shocking images that we can see on the screen there. The plane that we can see is a Japanese airline plane that hit the west coast of Japan. To give you some more details, a Japanese airline spokesperson says the aircraft in flames there, as we can see,
have survived. When there is a tragedy, how much does it affect the mindset of, well, both passengers, but also in your experience?
Well, there's a very good point you raise. The calmness attitude, so everybody reacts differently. The more you're trained, from their automatic position to manual, because you don't want the slide deploying when the door is opened on the stand. If you do that, people's lives are at risk.
Because airline flight A350 that landed at Haneda Airport, and the reason it is heavily on fire is because it collided.
A350 Japan Airlines flight.
Right. Well, the first thing to say is that although the videos show what looks like a catastrophic accident.
They still have a view from the tower, and the aircraft have lights at night, but if you think of the split-second timing of this, it wouldn't have taken more than a few seconds for the aircraft to turn.
Binoculars available as well. They have the data in front of them, which used to be paper strips and plastic holders. I would have no doubt at all that this airport actors, such as, for example, we see occasionally crew taxi into places where they shouldn't, and that includes taxiing onto runways that they shouldn't taxi onto.
You could do a later go around, but there are all sorts of complications because air brakes would have deployed. You would have already closed them.
But in any accident situation, it depends on what caused the accident and whether that was whether the causal factor reflects in any way on an airline or.
But I'm always have to be very, very careful before you start praising or doing the opposite.
機のショート事故が発生し、斉藤大臣は先ほど5名の死亡を発表されました。事故による乗客乗員への被害状況など現在入っている情報と受け止めをお願いします。
その使命感に敬意と感謝を表しながら哀悼の誠を捧げる次第です。
They would require some staff who are experts in disaster management. So we have had these detailed requests for who are on site at the aircraft disaster area and to provide support for them as much as possible.
Tetsu Saito, the Minister of Land Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism, giving an update, a couple of extra facts that we gleaned from that. The runway C at